My name is Eunice Ray, and I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk to Deanna. We've talked about fasting and metabolic health for some time and know how vital it is and that there is hope. Not everybody's going to do it, but there is hope. You kind of grew up on the standard American diet, didn't you? I did.
Yes, absolutely. I did. It wasn't the healthiest diet.
I was eating
3 times a day, snacks. That's typically what we see, recommendations for kids and so forth. And it's just not something that we need as adults. I always tell my patients, you're an adult, you're not a baby. You don't need to eat every 3 hours, okay? Because it's morphed into this every 3 hours eating like a baby.
Well, that's a very good point. I hadn't thought of that, but you're right. I have to tell everyone, Deanna is a functional medicine doc. And so the reason I love her as a doc is because she's looking to know why you have an issue, what we can do about it, to remedy it, to restore it. And she's not looking just to treat an illness, but functional medicine docs are a breath of fresh air. They're kind of new, aren't they?
Yes, very new, very new. And Eunice, if I may, I know you're going to interview me, but I actually did a podcast on this just yesterday and recorded a general guideline of what I recommend on a regular basis. And I'm every day dealing with, and whether it's a patient, a family member, a friend, I'm dealing with people who have insulin resistance, who have type 2 diabetes, who have hypertension, who have high cholesterol, who have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and a whole host of other problems. Those are metabolic issues. And good news is we have something that works and that gets fantastic results and that you can have a positive impact on these conditions. And in some cases, you can completely reverse these conditions. And it comes through diet, through nutrition, through lifestyle. Asking the question, am I willing to exchange my health issues and my current lifestyle and adapt a new way, a new lifestyle that is sustainable and is great. And you're going to feel good and you're going to have great energy and sleep well and all these other things, lose weight along the way if you've got weight to lose. And are you willing to do that? This is what I've done and has made a difference for me as an over 50-year-old female. Go through menopause, you start gaining weight, your metabolism changes, things shift. You got to figure out, this is my new metabolism. What do I do to get my old metabolism back, which is doable? And I know you've experienced that, Eunice. What I tell all of my patients, my family, my friends who are trying to get control of this and do the same thing is, hey, it's going to start with intermittent fasting. Okay, there you go. It's a free tool, intermittent fasting. And for a lot of people, this is just massive. It's earth shattering. I start when I can tell if it's earth shattering to you or not. And then I just say, let's start with 12 hours. Okay, that means if you eat dinner at 7 p.m., you have absolutely no calories until 7 a.m. Do you think you can do that? Most people will say yes, but you'd be surprised at how many people eat all the way up until they go to bed. They sleep maybe for 6 hours and they get up and they eat again. And that just is doing them such a disservice. It takes about 12 hours to burn through the sugar that's in your system. So that's why, really, we all should be fasting 12 hours at night. It makes sense. That's the whole reason that they call it a breakfast in the first place, because you're breaking your fast. So I start them at 12. I move them to 14 very quickly, and then ultimately to 16-hour fasts. And where they do a 16-8. So you fast for 16 hours. And then you open up your eating window and you eat for 8 hours. And during that 8 hours, your goal is to fuel your body with nutrient dense, really great foods and keep your carbohydrate count low. We have essential amino acids. It's essential we get them in our diet. We have essential fats. It's essential that we get them in our diet. Our body can't make them. There are no essential carbs, no essential carbohydrates. And so during that 8-hour eating window, I basically say, look, if you can keep your carbs to no more than 50 grams a day, sometimes if it's a bigger guy, depending on what the lifestyle is, even if I can get them to 100, they're going to see results with that. But if they are seriously metabolically challenged, their liver enzymes are a mess, their triglycerides are a mess, all this stuff, I'm telling you, you need to limit it to 50. Okay, get it down. And we'll have some people, some women who will even drop to 20. I typically tell people when you're eating this way in that 8-hour window, you don't have to count the carbs that's in the broccoli or the cauliflower. That's fiber carbs anyway. It's going to go right through you. But certainly you need to be mindful of the other things that are there. A slice of bread is 21 grams. So you can see how quickly you can add up. And basically just keeping it low carb. And that's something that people have had such great success implementing: regular, sustainable, intermittent fasting, eating nutrient-dense foods during their 8-hour window, it gets the results. We are seeing such dramatic results, and it thrills me. I had one friend and patient who saw her recently, and she looked gorgeous. And I said, "Oh my gosh, you look fantastic. What have you done?" And she said, "Thank you so much for that tip." And I said, "Which one?" Because we talked about so many things. And she said, "The tip to drop my carbs to no more than 50 grams a day." She said, "I had no idea how many carbs I was eating." And she said, "I was living on carbs. It was massive." And she said, "That one thing, I've dropped 2 sizes." And it was like a month since I'd seen her. And she dropped 2 sizes just by saying, "Oh, my limit is 50. So I've got to be watching this." So Eunice, what questions do you have for me?
Okay, so here's my only question. And I do want everyone to know that I am a faithful podcast listener. Deanna has a podcast series that is wonderful. Many of the people that I talk with, I am not a medical person, but I have done a tremendous amount of research in this because I know inflammatory foods at the cellular level can be tremendously destructive, and we're guided. And I think even you, Deanna, we all ate that way. It's like, oh my goodness, who knew? And listen to Deanna's podcast. It's just 10 or 15 minutes of what you need to know for the day, for the week. And it's been very, very helpful to many people as you go along, because this is all brand new in many ways and for many people. So here, I just want to ask you one question. You switch to a lasting lifestyle as well, personally.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want you to, in a very short, what you did and what you thought about. And because again, in the last few years, in the last 2 to 3 years, it's become very, very much trending to fast, but it was new to many of us. So you have a personal story, and I just would like you to tell us that.
Yes. As a physician and a health-minded physician, I have been with a healthy diet for many years. But especially as I went through menopause, I did start gaining weight. And one of the things that I realized was that as I started looking at some of the intermittent fasting information, diabetes runs in my family, so I'm always keeping that in the back of my mind. But one of the things I realized was that during the week when I was working, going into my office and seeing patients, I would have a protein shake at 7 or 7:30 in the morning because I'm on my way. I drink it in the car on the way to the office. I wasn't hungry, but I was drinking that really great protein shake to try to, because I know that I'm not going to have a chance to eat anything until I break for lunch. It's just fast paced. That's what I do for work. There's not going to be a break, no snacks, anything like that. And so it occurred to me that, my goodness, on weekends, my natural tendency, I'm not hungry. I basically get up, I do some things, I have black coffee, I exercise, and I don't ever eat anything until about 11:30 after I've exercised. And then I'm ready. I'm ready for that protein shake. So why am I eating this protein shake, forcing it in the morning when my body doesn't even want it? I'm not even hungry yet. When I looked at the intermittent fasting, I thought, I think that's actually would work really well for me and be a pretty easy transition, because why am I eating that shake in the morning? I typically will break my fast around 11:30 or 12. Sometimes it's a little later in the summer. I go for 16 hours and then break the fast, and then I eat in that 8-hour window. Now, for me, that might be protein shake, some healthy fats. That's critical. When you're learning how to fast, you've got to get healthy fat in there or you're going to be hungry. And then you will do really one main meal. That just works for me. Some people will do two, but a main meal for me is typically going to be maybe a piece of salmon and a bunch of vegetables. I might eat a grass-fed steak. I love a good steak and a bunch of vegetables. Or I might have some chicken and a bunch of vegetables. That's pretty much my main meal. If I'm in my 8-hour eating window and I'm hungry later, I might have another protein shake. I might have a handful of pecans. Sometimes I'll make little, I call them fat bombs, healthy coconut oil, fat, protein powder, and some almond butter that I refrigerate. I keep it super simple because that's how I function best, with a simple plan that's sustainable, that's easy. I can always grab some veggies, whatever. I grow a garden, try to eat healthy and clean from there. But at one point I was doing the 16 and 8. I was still struggling a little bit with my weight. And I will tell you, for people who feel like, no, I'm doing the 16-8, but I'm just not seeing the results that I need, I actually added in a couple of days of 18. And I only did it for a short time. And it really was the thing that let the weight go, if you will, allowed me to get back to my normal weight, which is where I am now. And so I did that for a couple of days. And I picked Sunday because normally I'm going to church at that time and that I would normally break my fast. And I'm like, I'll just make it until after and we'll have a great lunch or whatever and open up the eating window. What I love about this is it's flexible, Eunice. And it doesn't matter if you're a night shift worker, because I have a lot of nurses who work nights. You just flip it to your time and it works and it gets great results for the weight, but for all these other metabolic problems. That's what I use it for in my medical practice.
I really appreciate that. And I know you're right, the flexibility. And I have one last question. And by the way, you look wonderful. It's fascinating. Post menopause, you start to look kind of like a girl again, like younger. It's stunning. And toxins are being talked about a great deal. I heard a podcast the other day with a physician that came forward, and Parkinson's is kind of in the news these days. And he said, look, part of this Parkinson's, these neurological issues, they are as a big component of toxicity in that mix. And so we do live in a very toxic kind of environment. The products we put on our bodies, are often toxic, and the air we breathe, the soil, the water, all of those things are being brought bubbling up again to the surface. And if you have a comment about toxins and how one must avoid them or what to do, just your take on that, just the idea of why that's a big deal.
That's a great question, Eunice. And to me, this might be a surprising answer. Some of you are probably going to be surprised with this, but I feel it's a big deal because the toxins destroy your microbiome. The ultra processed foods, the chemicals that are in the foods, the chemicals that have been sprayed on the foods, it's not listed on the label half the time. I mean, sure, preservatives, whatever, are listed on the label, but all of our crops, many of our foods, the way that they're produced, they're mass sprayed. There's a residue from that spray of glyphosate. It ends up in the food. It's not on the label. It's in the Cheerios. It's in the goldfish. It's in all those things. Those toxins have a negative impact on the microbiome. Extremely well studied at MIT. You can go look that research up. What we know is that when the microbiome is not functioning properly, your immune system is not functioning properly. So many of these issues that we're seeing today are immune mediated. They're autoimmune conditions. So many docs maybe haven't made that connection that this autoimmune is linked to the microbiome because the immune system is there in your gut. But that is the connection. And it will just take time, but it will show up. I think probably 5 years ago, I kept saying glyphosate is going to be taken off the market. It just needs in 5 years or whatever. It hasn't been taken off yet, but certainly people have become more and more aware of how hazardous that particular chemical is. And that is the one, in fact, that they studied at MIT, looking at the microbiome and the impact that it has. But that's not the only chemical, Eunice. That's not the only one. Right. There's so many toxins out there in our environment. And one of the things I appreciate about the younger generation today is that they are mindful of this. Number one, they do care about the environment. They do not want to use plastic. They understand this issue with these microplastics, which is a big part of Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and all this other stuff. So they understand this and they very much want to do the right thing in regard to that. The other thing that I appreciate so much about them is while they might want some things fast, they are more willing to wait. They don't want fast food. They don't want a fast pill. A pill that's going to make this better. Instead, they really want to know what is a lifestyle that what can I do? Don't just give me a pill. That's you doing something. What can I do to make a difference here, to make an impact, to change this situation? And I love it that generation is willing, and I've raised some in that generation, but I love that they are willing to ask the question, what can I do about this problem? Whether it's my own health, or the problem with the microplastics, that is a common question. And I appreciate that very much. So that's my comment on toxins. It's definitely an issue and we could do a whole podcast on that.
And I've made the shift to better skincare, better body lotions, better foods, where my food comes from and what my meat eats and all those sort of things. And I appreciate your taking this time. You help many people through the podcast. What's so great about this generation of doctors is that they are coming to social media and to different formats, the podcasts, et cetera, to teach us to take control. And the responsibility is shifting to us where it really can only be to have a good outcome. So thank you so much for your time. You are greatly appreciated and loved, and I'm very grateful for your taking the time.
Aw, thanks so much, Eunice. I appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity. You have a great day.
You too. Take care.
Thanks.